Welcome to the Energy Transition Technology Chat. I'm joined today by Laurent Schmitt, the General Secretary of ENTSO-E. Laurent, thanks for taking the time to have a chat.
Thank you for the chat.
Laurent, for people that may not know you, can you do a quick introduction?
So I'm Laurent Schmitt. I'm historically coming from the software smart grid space, where I've had 20 years of my career in Alstom GE in smart grid related technologies. And 2 years ago, I switched my career more moving into the end user parts and grid operators. And I'm now in charge of the ENTSO-E with the Association of Transmission Grid Operators, which is very central into establishing rules on how systems and markets, grid systems and markets operate together in Europe.
Now, when I started working with, when I was with Intel and I started getting involved in the whole energy industry, I became aware of what ENTSO-E was up to. And you guys are one of the most active groups within the whole energy transition in Europe. For folks that are involved in the whole grid and networking and whatever, they'll know you guys well, but a lot of folks out there may not be aware of what ENTSO-E is up to. So what do you guys do?
So yeah, it's a very good question, and we have we are kind of a multifaceted association. One side of it is definitely to get TSOs to come in Brussels and work together, collaborate, and basically defines rules, way of operating the system, also share their best idea on innovation. And so that's more a kind of a hub of collaboration and knowledge between TSO. That's one side, one facet. The second facet which we have is more a legal facet, and that is more towards ACER and the European Commission, where we have certain number of legal mandates, and we do produce for them, for instance, a key calculation that they like the 10-year network development plan, which are projecting how the grid system in Europe needs to be developed over the next 20-30 years. We also do work in relation to market design, defining a lot of market codes on how to evolve the market operation in Europe to allow further integration of a system together. We also do have a lot of activity related to network codes. Basically, we write together with the TSOs all the rule book on how the system works and how people who want to use the system, who want to connect renewable demand response, need to integrate and interact with the pan-European grid system.
Now, as I said, when I started getting involved in the whole energy sector, and I always knew that let's say what they were calling the smart grid was one of the most complex real-time systems on the planet. But when I started to understand some of the work that goes on behind the scenes to just keep the whole transmission networks and stuff working, I was like, oh God, you know, you guys have been at this for a while, and the technology, the physics, and as you say, the rules and regulations, I found that fascinating. Now, one of the things as well, as we started looking at some of the working groups, and it popped up about we want the EU, the whole energy union, was the need for transparency. So one of the things I just wanted to chat to you this morning about was back in 2015, ENTSO-E, you guys brought out your transparency platform. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so it's an interesting tool. First of all, I think it directly relates to one of our legal mandates on producing a level of transparency on data related to the way the grid system and the markets are used in Europe. That consists of an open data hub. If I look what it is, so it was not like at the beginning true open data. I think for the years last year, we decided to turn most of the data, 80% of the content of that hub being open data. And that's basically a platform which we continuously enrich while the market design evolves to basically incorporate data related to balancing markets, further price data, and all data which can foster competition and innovation onto the energy market space. And I must say that platform has really grown significantly. We produce millions of streams of data per day now in terms of real-time operation. We've seen the number of users to our platform multiply by 20 in 5 years. So there is a good momentum. And that also goes with the fact that TSOs are expected to be more and more transparent towards what they are doing by regulators. So while the regulator push for more transparency, the amount of data into this platform increases, and naturally becomes one of the strong reference points for every traders or market operator wanted to interact within our system.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we post out this video, I'll put in links to the actual platform because it's available to everybody. You go to the ENTSO-E website, you click, you get to the transparency platform. So you mentioned that more and more data is being fed into this in real time. So who exactly is feeding in the data?
So it's mostly, first of all, it's mostly data coming from individual TSOs in Europe. And so we have 43 TSO who are part of ENTSO-E, and basically the 27 one from the European Union have a legal mandate and a legal obligation to publish certain data into it. Others are also publishing data more on a voluntary basis. But we also have data-related data which are being published by power exchange or by generators about availability of their assets, outages, and basically it gathers all together all relevant information, which indirectly has an influence on the resource which gets dispatched into our system or onto prices. And it is updated on real time through the day, several times through the day, more than once an hour, I think.
So it's almost real time system data from the transmission system operators across Europe.
Yes, it is.
And now when we send out the link, people will see that when they go onto the site, they'll start to see you get load information, generation, transmission, balancing, outages. Congestion management. So it really is the lifeblood of the TSO system in terms of this is how people make decisions and plan for the day ahead and bidding and markets.
Exactly. So these are basically reference data for enabling strategic decision by market participants, mostly generators. It has been started as a platform where we mostly look at large size units. So I think the majority of our data today is around units of more than 100 megawatts. But what we see while we progress is there is tendency onto lowering down the size of these units to go and have more visibility also on what happens on lower level resources, distributed energy resource typically. And so we do have ongoing demonstration and innovation projects where we are trying to size how far are these platforms going to evolve in the future towards prosumers, demand response, distributed energy resource, and so on. So in a nutshell, it has started as a platform for wholesale trading, so rather large size unit, and with the introduction of retail, wholesale, TSO, DSO, and so on, it has now, it is progressively evolving to a lower size unit.
Now, one of the things that I found fascinating a couple of months back and whatever, when we were chatting and seeing some of the stuff you guys are putting out, was the people that are starting to use this data, including some startups.
Yeah, so it's also very interesting to see the population of people using this data hub. This was, I would say, at the beginning, primarily traders and I would say traditional utilities and I would say the usual participants into the markets, and they were mostly using, RESTful APIs, just sucking data, open data, connecting this real time with their backend IT systems, and this was mostly, I would say, real time data usage application. recently we've seen that more and more requests about improving our user interface. So we are going to launch a new generation user interface in the coming months with a more junior, I would say, startup, if I may say, less specialized, but really wanted to plug, I would say, tools from the market, artificial intelligence, more technology stuff, and just trying to run and crunch the data without basically having the to control or a real asset behind. And I rather see them as being advisors into the market or facilitators rather than traditional utilities and traders. Very, very interestingly, we also have seen some trying to use that data for prosumers. One of them, it's a very interesting one called Tomorrow, and Tomorrow has now established a set of dashboards for real-time carbon footprint monitoring across Europe, and they even go now worldwide. And what they are trying to do now is, out of the data from the Transparency Platform and other similar platforms, they are trying to project a footprint of CO2 to prosumer, to individuals, which are really according to the real-time dispatch of the system. So, and they don't really care about trading or generation. They are just focusing on using AI for the purpose of feeding signals to end users and prosumers. So I think this is really fascinating to see this evolution.
So myself as, say, a consumer, so I get whatever, I'm receiving electrons down the line right now, and then basically, because you've got real-time data, you can use AI to figure out where was that generated? Is it coming from the wind farm? Is it coming from whatever plant?
Absolutely. So basically, this startup is trying to analyze the real footprint, the real carbon intensity of each electrons which you receive onto your connection points of your house, according basically to data which gets published into this platform. So in a nutshell, if you've got a microgrid and if you've got PV on your roof, and if you've got an electrical vehicle, you don't have only the logic of trying to charge your vehicle with your PV, but you also have the logic of trying to figure out what is the green factor of the electricity inflow into your house. So you can also have a charging strategy in line with basically the electrons which are supplied into the systems. So I think it's really fascinating when a lot of people ask what are the true indicators for prosumers in the future, and I'm a believer that the carbon footprint of individuals will become an important indicator in the context of climate change and all that kind of element. And we have in our hands in this transparency platform a lot of data and real data which are able to have artifacts about this carbon footprint.
Now, you mentioned earlier about when you, last year with the transparency platform, you started looking at open data. You also did some work with the Linux Foundation. There was a new initiative, the LF Energy initiative kicked off with the Linux Foundation. Open source software development for the energy transition?
Yeah, so that's, I would say, a separate path of work which we are doing in ENTSO-E. So as part of our new IT strategy in ENTSO-E, we are working on defining more consistent IT architecture across the various systems being used by TSO locally or by regional security coordinators at the regional level or by ENTSO-E at the pan-European level. And that drives naturally to try to harmonize as much as possible data exchange, data interface between all these systems. And I think we came to a point where our TSO community does recognize that there is value in trying to minimize the amount of effort which we do on the plumbing, if I may say, of this platform, all these backend systems, connectivity layers, and so on. And the idea of that Linux Foundation is still a trial for us, but we are quite convinced that it can work. Is basically to open source a certain level of these API interface in order to foster development around us, which are in the higher level of the application, but which are based on more consistent sets of data APIs and as much as possible, when it's relevant, open interfaces. So I think it's a trial which we have to. We realize we don't move fast enough on digital development with the developer community, which are in-house at TSO, ENTSO-E, and regional security coordinator. And we are trying now to tap with this open source community, trying to bring these very smart developers so that basically they plug their new ideas, AIs, and IoT straight into more standardized API and backend system.
And looking at the LF Energy projects, you know, they're doing operator fabric. There's stuff for simulating power grids. There's also quite interesting one around a distributed software platform for smart grid apps. And you know, as we talk more and more about, as you say, there will be the energy markets are evolving. There'll be new business models. I'll have an electric car. I'll charge it. The services offered. People will be providing me with power as a service and whatever. If you like, as you say, the plumbing underneath. But people need to be aware that there are existing markets. There are existing network codes. You know, I do a lot of work with some of the, let's say, startups, and in the past 12 months, there was a lot of stuff around blockchain and, oh, we'll have peer-to-peer networks and whatever. But even if you have the coolest technology for a microgrid, you still need to have some comprehension of what goes on behind the curtain in terms of the energy markets. And when you're chatting with the EU and grid stability and energy security, yada, yada, yada. So it's fascinating. But being able to give the people access to the data, as you said, they'll find out ways of using it that we never thought of, right?
Yeah, that's clearly, and we want to facilitate that. We see a lot of very good ideas from these startups or New World and so on, but also with some tendency to reinvent the wheel in some cases on how they interact with our backend systems. And here, what we really want for that initiative is to avoid this to happen, so that we can take the benefits of their value addition or value proposition on where it is, and not on reinventing the plumbing. So in fairness to, I would say, to the founder of this initiative, we were not the initiator of that initiative. I think this was brought into ENTSO-E by RTE, the French grid transmission system operator. Mm-hmm. It brought various initiatives from various academics, and IBM, I know now, is fully embarked into the initiative as well. And we brought our own ENTSO-E piece as well. And the ENTSO-E piece itself is very much onto this connectivity layer between all what happened at the grid edge on one side, so all these new technology at the grid edge, and the connectivity with the IT on the back end. So we really want to foster the development to source better developers in the future, and we hope that it will grow a smart community around the very strategic topic of digital for climate change, energy efficiency, energy management, and all that kind of new topics.
And you know, we chatted before when you guys were announcing this initiative and stuff. If you map into the whole change in the generation of the workforce, the ever increasing role of software into how the energy transition happens, you start mapping all that in, open source, startups, the different culture of come in and let's try something. And as you say, let's not reinvent the wheel. We don't need to write another maybe back-end system, but how do we interact with it?
Exactly.
So there's bits, what would you say? I wouldn't say there's a perfect storm, but there's bits and pieces coming together that you don't have to do everything, just leverage what's there.
Exactly.
Now, I know from the times I've been engaged with you guys at ENTSO-E, you cover so many various, you have a lot of things on the go at any one time, because you have the whole EU legislative framework, you've got innovations around technology within the TSOs, new legal rules, GDP, you name it, right? What are the big things you're working on this year at ENTSO-E?
It's definitely a lot around implementation of network codes and clean energy package. And what comes really clear is we cannot afford doing it without digital anymore. And digital is an absolute must for us to be successful in these deployments of codes. And I can give you a few examples here. A lot, for instance, in Europe is about introducing renewable at very massive scale, as what you probably heard. There are ongoing debates on whether we should be carbon neutral in 2050 or not. But carbon neutral in 2050 means really fully decarbonize into the electrical system, as you know, because the electrical system is, in a way, the easiest way to decarbonize. If we do so, that would mean we would have to run the grids with only renewable resources, and that would drastically change the tool which are required, particularly to manage security of the system. And all these issues of N-1 contingency analysis, and on one side, I think every European is used to an electrical system which is available close to 100% of its time. I think the last blackout is now dating a long time ago, fortunately. And so it's always having a balance between maintaining this quality of supply and enabling the introduction of more and more renewable. And the only way we can live with this is introducing further digital technology. So now if I go to the meat around the bone, we are currently working on a new platform called the Common Grid Model Platform, the CGM. And what we are trying to do here is being able in real time to have all data required for system security analysis shared across the entire TSO community, so that when they operate their system in the real time, and the TSO are in charge of operating the system in real time, they can assess their system in view of the entire pan-European perspective. So basically, everyone needs more and more to know exactly the accuracy of the stability of their system in the perspective of all what goes around, not only into their close neighborhood, but at the pan-European level. And here, that means exchanging much larger amounts of data. That means data which are extremely cyber sensitive. And so that means putting a cybersecurity layer on the top of it, which is sufficiently robust. And that means also an environment which is close to real time. Because as we know in Europe, the renewable brings challenges about aligning markets with physics, aligning the balancing of the system with the physics. And the only way we can do that is with a close to real-time projection of the capacity limit of the grids, of the physical capacity, with the real-time clearing of all the bids transaction, particularly on the balancing and auxiliary service of the grid system. So here you really have a mega scale digital project, which is not only at ENTSO-E, it touches basically all the layers, TSOs, regional security coordinator, and ENTSO-E. It's about bringing, I would say, a new private cloud infrastructure at the pan-European level, which is able to handle this real-time calculation. So it is a very significant digital agenda which we are currently ongoing in the TSO community and at ENTSO-E.
You know, I mentioned earlier when I started getting involved probably 10 years ago with the whole energy transition, finding out that, you know, to your point, it's almost as close to the biggest real-time system on the planet. If something happens in power quality or frequency at one end of the European grid in Portugal, within a couple of minutes, that can propagate through the entire European grid. And the laws, as you say, the laws of physics don't change, right? Regardless of what cool digital technology we have. So being able to deal with that in real time, Then people coming up with new business models about, hey, I've solar on my roof, Laurent, I'll sell you my electrons here to whatever, to your office in Brussels. The complexity of getting the electrons from A to B hasn't changed. The laws of physics didn't change. So being able to, because put it this way, without grid security, and you mentioned, you know, for all intents and purposes at a European level, the fact that the lights stay on for 99.99999% of the time is incredible, right? Given the complexity behind under the covers. And nobody wants it to get less reliable or less energy security. So, and yet you need to transition into folks like myself being a prosumer, or electric car driving around in a couple of years and is it a battery on wheels, and. So it is fascinating to be able to try and join the dots, and at the European system level, it's the energy union in action.
Yeah, exactly. It's a technical part of the energy union.
Agreed. And you know, as I say, when I started figuring out, and I had to go back to my physics lectures in college to get back to Ohm's law and all sorts of reactive power. And, you know, one of the things I found as well that's very useful for folks that may not live in the whole energy transmission, energy distribution world, but when you go onto the transparency platform, you start to figure out that, okay, there's control zones and bidding zones, and how, you know, you start to figure out that there's a whole methodology, network codes, there's laws of physics behind this work. So you have to start thinking about that to be able to have a credible business plan, regardless of how cool your technology is. So that's one way of figuring out what's going on behind the curtain. It is fascinating.
Yeah, and what is really fascinating in our domain is that we are a true systems of systems. So we start from pan-European systems, which is a combination of various TSO systems, and keeping in mind the TSOs have the responsibility of security of supply. So it's the role of ENTSO-E is more organizing the collaboration between TSOs around this security of supply. Then if you go one step lower, you've got the TSO-DSO interface, which is obviously a big case on how can we assess the capacity of the system in a consistent way across transmission and distribution. And then if you go one step below, you've got the, I would say, DSO community side, and with all what happens on prosumer communities, prosumer wishing to participate into microgrid communities, in parallel to the market. So indirectly, when it comes to the market integration, it very much directly goes back to the connectivity with the TSO, but in the same time, without ignoring the constraint on the DSO. So we really see a large number of systems interacting together. And when I was talking about these backend APIs, and it's really a large number of APIs, and the complexity of that architecture and harmony of that architecture directly drives efficiency into the way the system will be able to operate in the future.
No, it's fascinating taking all of what's been developed over the years, the legacy infrastructure, all of the new technologies coming down the line, trying to munch it all together. So I look forward to the common grid model work, because the devil's in the detail. That's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
Now, if people want to find out more about yourself or more about ENTSO-E, where should we send them?
So we do have basically all external innovators, because you represent, I think, very well this community of external innovators, and congratulations for the work which you do, Kevin. I personally follow it almost on a daily basis. I think it brings very consistent news across the entire system. So I personally like it. And when I see the people which you bring around, the most natural interface in ENTSO-E would be with our research and innovation committee. Mm-hmm. And we have created around this committee several innovation hubs, so where we are trying to follow certain topics. And in particular, we have also created a set of webinars in relation to what we call our business network for innovation, where we precisely would like to plug and connect with relevant techies, being able to offer ideas, technologies, concepts into our system. So I think we have now this business network community around our innovation committee. And I would encourage you personally, as well as your followers, to further engage into that. That today generates around 1 webinar per month.
Okay.
And we've seen an exponential participation into these webinars, to our surprise. On our last webinar, we had 500 people connected to the webinar. And this was on dynamic line rating, dynamic grid assessment, and so on. And we bring basically topics like electrical vehicle integration, blockchain, basically all the top of the iceberg when it comes to digital grid innovation. So I think it's really the plugging point, and from there, I'm pretty sure if you have relevant people, will be able to get them engaged into some of our projects.
Oh, perfect. Laurent, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Yes, thank you for the interview and the chat. That was very interesting.
Hey, no worries. See you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.